And to give a recording, so you should be right up. I do.
Okay.
Sales tax.
All set.
Yeah.
Okay, good morning. We'll call the governance committee meeting of June 18th, 2025 to order. Our next item on the agenda is to accept the minutes from the April 16th, 2025 meeting. Is there a motion?
So,
Is there a second?
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion, the minutes are accepted. At this time, we'll open the meeting to public comment. If there's anyone here who would like to address the governance committee, you have 5 minutes. We just ask if you give your name and address. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment section of the meeting.
John's on vacation.
Must be.
The next item on the agenda is a review, discussion, recommendation of a resolution extending from June 18th, 2025 to June 18th, 2026. The period during which Fairmore Incorporated, the company, is authorized to claim sales tax and use tax exemption benefit as agent of the Boone County Industrial Development Agency, approving an extension of the sales and use tax exemption agreement by and between the agency and the company, and authorizing the execution and delivery and or filing of related forms and documents in connection therewith, provided that the total sales and use tax exemption benefit shall not exceed $66,880 as authorized by the agency pursuant to resolution adopted on June 18th, 2023.
Good afternoon or good morning still, everyone. So this request comes from Ferromar. This is a project that we supported through a sales tax exemption about a year ago. Ferromar is a clean energy company. They produce a insular exterior panel. They have funding from both from NYSERDA and are locating in the former Cogen facility in the Charles Street Business Park. They have received that building from the city of Binghamton and are working on the renovation and fit out to essentially produce these modular panels. They have hit some delays with their progress due, I think, mostly related to some equipment delays, purchase of equipment, and are requesting just an additional year on the value of that sales tax exemption from June 18th of 2020 till June 18th of next year.
Any questions or discussion?
Overall, they're happy with how things are going. Thanks.
Yes, they have some really large pieces of equipment that they have had to kind of create an outdoor, it's a tent structure, but it's considered an outdoor building. So they're just dealing with some issues related to code and working with the city through some challenges there. But as far as I know, they're gearing up to start producing in a larger volume and.
Is there a motion?
I'll move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried.
Go ahead, Jim.
Next item on the agenda, a review, discussion, recommendation of a resolution accepting an application from CMP Advanced Mechanical Solutions LLC or an entity formed to be formed on a later date on behalf of foregoing the company providing a sales and use tax exemption benefit in an amount currently estimated not to exceed $24,720 to facilitate the upgrade, modernization, and equipping of certain systems, positions, and supplies at the company's existing electromechanical manufacturing facility located at 90 Bevere Street in the city of Binghamton, making a finding that the proposed action and the providing of the financial assistance to the company constitutes a type 2 action pursuant to 6 NYCRR section 617.5 and therefore is exempt from review under the Environmental Quality Review Act.
So this comes as a second request from CMP. CMP is a Canadian-based contract manufacturing company with a facility on Bevere Street in the city of Binghamton. They are undergoing some modest upgrades to their existing facility. These upgrades include infrastructure adjustments and both to inside the facility and also some improvements to the grounds. Examples are modifications of the modifications include purchase and installation of new manufacturing equipment such as welding power supplies, welding positioners, dust collection systems, finishing systems, water testing systems, assembly and fulfillment systems, and handling and organization equipment, upgrades to electrical and mechanical systems, as well as heating and cooling equipment. So this is considered a second phase of this effort to upgrade their facility. Their total project costs related to this phase are $627,000, leaving an estimated value of New York state and local tax sales at exemption would be $24,720.
Okay, any questions or
Yes,
comments?
but they say they're gonna create 20 jobs. What kind of jobs are we talking about?
I think mostly connected, probably mostly just to the production floor of what they're doing. Well, it looks like they're increasing welding equipment, so they do heavy, really, they're a heavy equipment contract manufacturer. So they're doing a lot with welding and power supplies. They didn't really state specifically what those occupations are, but my understanding is they're all connected to production.
Pretty well paying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
fifty to $110,000.
Yeah, I'm thinking between 50 and 100. Not
20 new
bad.
jobs for this modest request, I think is excellent.
Yeah, and they're a company that has been, quietly doing really well. They transitioned a lot of what they're producing to now in the clean energy space. They create framing for large scale battery storage systems, and seeing a lot of growth in that area. So I know they are out. In addition to this, we're hopeful that they'll be making another sizable expansion. So in constant conversation with them on what their needs are.
There's no connection. BOCES has a welding program.
Mhm.
There's no connection
No.
here.
Not that I'm aware of. They may be working with BOCES for them not.
That would be wonderful.
Well, I mean, if there could be potential employees for that.
Yeah.
That's like, we'll post it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Hopefully, hopefully it's an opportunity for some of the students taking that, to have jobs locally.
yeah.
They for local labor.
BOCES has. been-
No, I
oh,
mean, CMP.
Oh.
They didn't know there's,
Yeah,
Yeah, they're using all local.
Hmm?
They're using all local.
yeah, everything is
Mhm.
stand up and.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's carried. Next item on the agenda is a resolution accepting an application from Value Auto or an entity formed or to be formed on a later date on behalf of the foregoing, the company providing a sales and use tax exemption benefit in the amount currently estimated not to exceed $62,340 to acquire and install construction materials, machinery, furniture, fixtures, and equipment at a new steel building to be constructed at 113 Bevere Street in the city of Binghamton, and making a finding that the proposed action and the providing of financial assistance to the company constitutes an unlisted pursuant to the 6 NYCRR section 617, and that the action will not have a significant adverse impact on the environment.
all right, so this is related to a new business coming into the area. Value Auto and Towing is a multi-location, second-generation, family-owned business founded in 1996 in Owego, New York. They've since expanded to about 10 to 12 locations across New York and Pennsylvania. They offer 24/7 light-duty and heavy-duty towing, roadside assistance, and auto repair services at their Owego shop. Frequently used by insurance companies, emergency services, and have grown their fleet to include trucks, rotators, and heavy-duty units. Value Auto and Towing is an established locally operated towing and auto repair service. They are investing in a new steel fabricated facility at 113 Bevere Street, very close to CMP, with Pritchard Development Corporation overseeing construction. The move aims to expand their urban presence and support growth in the city of Binghamton service contract area, particularly for police and emergency response. They do have towing yards and storage located in Broome County, but this is the first this will be their first full-service shop Total project costs are just a little bit over $1 million. And they're seeking a sales tax exemption of $62,340.
Any questions or comments?
Good.
The motion?
So move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is a resolution approving revisions to the agency's uniform tax exemption policy with respect to the abatement of real property taxes for certain qualified residential housing projects.
Okay, so this proposed modification to our UTEP, comes after, I'd say several months, or if not years, of conversations about the need to kickstart new housing, builds, specifically related to single-family homes that can be, sold, versus rentals. Currently, if a housing development, single-family housing development is for rent, it is qualified under our traditional UTEP because those houses would be considered a commercial project. What this proposal does was it, I guess, expands our authority to potentially provide a pilot benefit to single-family developments that are being built but for sale. We've done some research on where this is happening elsewhere in New York State. I know Rome, New York is one area where they're doing this related to the growth of the Griffiths Business and Technology Park. I think New Rochelle is
affordable.
doing this, single family homes as affordable. The board would have, a lot of discretion in how the pilot would be structured. It could be something that simply provides benefit to, a builder taking on the risk of building a multi-development, housing development. But those properties could be sold versus rent. We have a number of interested builders in our community. One of the challenges is cost and associated risk to hold properties for a period of time. This would alleviate some of that burden and could initiate the construction of single-family housing developments. The county, I think 2 years ago, issued a countywide housing assessment that looked at both rentals and single-family homes. I think the total number of units that the housing needs assessment said we were deficient was about 6,000 units. Of that, I think there were roughly 4,000 that were recommended for new single-family home units. So this could be a way to kickstart or support construction of that housing. So we had asked Chris to create some potential language that would modify our UTEP to enable the board to consider projects that would be single-family home or potentially, duplex units that would be for sale versus rentals. Anything else I should add to that?
No, I think you summarized it nicely.
I love it. We need this so badly. We've talked about doing something, so I'm glad we've come up with some ideas. I like that we have a lot of discretion, but should we have some constraints? And are there targets for size or value of the homes that are being built? I could see some criticism if, the first one that comes to us with $1 million home. Are there limitations that we should be considering?
I think it would be prudent to probably put some framework around the criteria for this. To that purpose, is this intended strict, solely to support the developer, the builder taking on the risk? And does that benefit cease upon transfer? I think, the board would have discretion at that. Is there a minimum number of units? We don't want to be too limiting, but at the same time, are there a certain number of units we would want to look at that would be considered this would be considered a project in the eyes of the IDA? Certainly not one.
It would have to be a commercial project.
Yeah.
Right, and so you guys would have to make a finding that it's a commercial project. One home, $1 million home. I think that would be challenged and successfully challenged.
Mhm.
So I think you do have to make it's gotta be some kind of development, some kind of larger scale project. I just provided language So you guys have the opportunity to do it. The business decision of you guys telling me what constraints you want in there, we'll draft for you. I just need to know what those are. As Stacy said, I don't think you should be completely limiting in the UTEP, but I do think you should have some fencing.
And
Would this include attached housing?
it could,
Yeah.
yes.
That's where your economy comes.
Mhm.
Right,
Like, for example, duplex,
Yeah.
townhome style units.
Well, attached housing, they could be completely separate, but
And one thing as far as, from a cost perspective, is there a price point? I know we did at least a year ago, we did look at a market study on new builds. And what the price point was. I think that would be something that would be prudent for us to do on an annual or semi-annual basis, which is to do a market analysis. What is the true cost of building, or, what's that value there? And I think that price point was somewhere between, 400,000 was sort of the low end. But there was a threshold that I think we may want to stay within and just test the market on maybe a biannual basis to make sure we're not
Mhm.
incenting things that are overly, unrealistic for the market.
So the benefit would go to the contractor, not to the homeowner.
Well, I think that's
that's
what,
another decision.
that's what this
Peter's
board
point,
would
I
decide.
think subsidizing taxes for people building $500,000 homes, that would be a hard sell. For anybody.
We need new homes though, so I don't know, I wouldn't pass that. I mean, I wouldn't say that out of the gate.
But why should the taxpayers subsidize somebody building a $500,000 home?
Same reason that we do other pilots, we're getting new homes into the community.
But it's one home this is.
It's not one home, the way we're
No, I'm
talking
talking
about.
about, if it's going to the contractor, it's one thing, but if it's going to you, I'm helping subsidize your taxes.
I'm not saying for 20 years, but maybe it's a scaled 5-year to get new homeowners into a home, get them into the community.
Well, then I want a tax benefit too, for staying in.
Then they'll live
We
at
all
home.
do.
I'm just telling you,
Existing
I'm just telling you how it's,
businesses do too, and
I'm just gonna tell you how it's gonna play.
Well, and I think
Somebody's
that-
coming in building a $500,000
We have it-
home, why do they need taxpayer assistance?
Because first of all,
I understand the concept, but
I don't take this the wrong way, but $500,000 home is not that an expensive home anymore. It's just not. We said the average is 400, whatever. I mean,
I think it was the low end.
right, at low end of new, we're talking about new construction. And we have a dearth of new construction in this community. And one of the reasons that there is no new construction is because the entry point is so high. If you look to build a new home, especially depending on the town that you're in, the tax, and Mike, you can certainly speak to this, but the taxes are a major obstacle. And just like they are on other commercial projects, and I think we need to think about this in the same way as commercial projects. And I don't believe at this moment, we're gonna walk through and resolve every issue.
Right.
But I think we need to probably have some robust discussions about what that looks like. Because, if you only subsidize the builder, they'll build it. But what good is building it if no one's gonna buy it? Because the tax is so high.
well, yeah.
well, the taxes
I
are high
mean,
for everybody.
especially when
So,
you're talking
they're not-
Endicott and Johnson
Right.
City.
What?
The
Got
problem is,
double taxes.
Right, the thing, I'm just saying, it's gonna be a hard sell to the general public.
problem, and, speak
But
to
that's
Mike,
just
the problem is that
Debate-related thing.
in some of these communities, the tax rates, when you compare new home compared to an existing structure are astronomically far apart.
Why,
And that creates a disincentive in those communities for new construction. Is that, you're in the
I
business?
agree, a total
Yeah.
100%, but you still have the picture, the visual of someone coming in, building a $500,000, $700,000 home and getting it, for lack of a better word, a personal tax break. That's not gonna play
But
in this community.
but
I'm telling you.
the reverse.
I
of that-
agree with the need for
But
it.
that you're only seeing half the equation. The flip side of that is that if somebody builds a new home, their tax on that new home is disproportionately high to their next door neighbor.
Yeah.
And so the question is, who's really getting subsidized there? The next door neighbor is the one who's getting subsidized by the person who built the new home. Because the new home, the next door neighbor, if they've been in that house for 30 years, hasn't seen their assessment change,
Oh,
right? And the new home starts at the full assessment. And you wind up with this disparity that doesn't make any sense at all. So, you know,
I agree, but
Well-
I'm telling you,
well,
it's gonna be hard to
Well,
sell.
they had, villages had programs where if you build a new house, your assessment increased 10% every year. So that at year 10, you were paying full taxes based on full assessment.
which sounds an
That
awful
makes
lot like a
sense.
pilot, which sounds an awful lot
That's,
like a
that's
pilot.
exactly what we're talking about. John, as you probably know more than anybody here, if you're talking about attached housing, what are you talking about per unit of new construction? Say you had a fourplex.
I'm not following your question. What?
Your costs
Rephrase
to
What
build.
are you talking about? Cost of construction of one unit as part of a fourplex.
Significantly lower if you build a fourplex, right?
But in terms of dollars, 300,000?
It's hard to say, because right now, construction costs, I think Peter can speak to this better than me. We're talking $300 a square foot without even batting an eye, so. Costs are
So you're talking
hard to.
possibly $250,000-300,000.
And,
That's not
and
bad.
personally, I think it would be prudent to have a reasonable sunset on this. I agree with Peter. I don't think we're suggesting a 20-year term. And John and I had that conversation as well, that it needs to do a few things, right? We know we have a current shortage of housing units, especially in that realm of single-family homes. We know it's a challenge for employers who are recruiting. We know it's a challenge for people, looking to stay in the area. The question, and we know the costs are just prohibitive to new builds. The builders aren't taking on that risk. So, again, I think goes back to the board's discretion on creating a program that meets the objective, which is to kickstart new builds. It takes into account, I think, reasonable cost based on markets analysis that we do. We have one currently, and some rational time frame in which it benefits the builder and potentially a short-term benefit for the new buyer.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's things that.
I like this change. And I think just acknowledging, we're gonna have further discussion
Yeah,
down the road.
I don't mind the change. I just think that it's the devil's in the details.
Right.
That's how we frame it.
But I'm just concerned about the visuals, somebody coming in, say the new president of BU makes $1 million, is building a home and gets a tax break. I think people are gonna say, what?
But that's
Again,
not
so
what we're
we-
talking about. We're
it's
talking about
part of
them
the
buying a home and the development of maybe 10 other homes that are getting built.
Right,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's gonna be,
Or 50 homes,
Yeah.
or however many,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's a development. It's not a single
no, but I mean, if this goes,
project.
that's why I said if there's a way that this could go to the, well, we can discuss it. I'm just throwing it out there as things I just see as concern for the visual. We weren't gonna settle that now, so I mean, there's a lot of discussion to come, so.
I knew this would be a healthy topic.
So,
That's an important one.
And so we've had issues before with, the state, this falls under, this doesn't meet any kind of, remember we talked about putting something at the state level, this doesn't mean any of that, this kind of falls within the purview of.
You would have to make the finding that it's a commercial project. And the court will hold you to an arbitrary and capricious standard. So long as your finding is reasonable. And you're not only giving it to certain developers and you're applying it uniformly, then you've acted reasonably.
Any other comments or questions? Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried.
that's everything.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Second,
Yeah.
all in favor? Aye.